So hey everybody, TR back with episode 2 of On the Road from the Cockpit. Just getting ready to leave Pocatello, Idaho. Staying here at the Bannock County Fairgrounds. Quite the busy week at the fairgrounds. They had the state rodeo championships going on here. And so I ended up staying up in the parking lot.
I was gone for the day, and you can imagine my surprise when I came back. I found this big-ass pile of gravel that the county had built out here right in front of my coach. This is time-lapse video from a security camera that I have on the front of my RV, and it's quite surprising to see how close some of the trucks get.
I got to spend some time with friends here in Pocatello, and that was really nice. And got to play a little bit of golf, and just had Father's Day brunch with friends and family. So I'm going to get things jacked up here and head down the road. Actually, I'm already set up and ready to roll. I'm just waiting for my turn at the dump station. So from here, we're headed over to Jerome, Idaho. Going to stop at the Freightliner dealer over there just off of I-84. Get some service done, and then head on up north towards Haysper Fish Hatchery, which is up in Blaine County, Idaho. And we'll be starting our fishing season then. Well, it looks like my turn's up, so I'm going to go dump tanks and get ready to hit the road. That I'm sitting here at the Warner Truck Centers just off of I-84 in Jerome, Idaho, and this is for some scheduled service. Well, sort of scheduled. We're going to talk a little bit about that in just a bit. When is it time to get professional service? So as a lifelong DIYer, I have done most of my own service on my vehicles for years, for the reason I want to try to save some money. And I've actually been to this location before because I used to live about 30 minutes from here. And I'm just going to have them do some service on Rusty the RV today. Now, why do I come to a truck shop versus going to an RV dealer? Well, first off, this truck shop knows Freightliner gear. They have Freightliner parts, they have the direct line to get Freightliner parts, and I tend to use OEM or original parts on my rigs like this as much as I possibly can where it makes sense. I've been working with this Warner Truck Center here for over a week now because I wanted to get the basic service done. And let's talk about what I'm going to have done. I'm going to have the oil change, oil filter, and fuel filter. I changed the air filter myself about 2 weeks ago while I was at my dad's. I'm going to have the transmission serviced. I'm going to put synthetic oil in it. This will be my second cycle of synthetic oil change in the transmission, so now I can go to a different maintenance cycle on it. I took Camp Freightliner, which is the Freightliner authorized training system for motor coach owners, motorhome owners. This class I took was done at the Newmar Country Club International Rally in Pueblo, Colorado in 2016. And a fellow named Mike Cody, who came out from Gaffney, South Carolina, where the XC chassis are manufactured, where the motorhome chassis are manufactured, is a training guide. And man, he is so good. And he'll put together this book. Well, he made this book specifically for my coach. So when you register for the class, they get the VIN, the vehicle identification number for your coach. And Mike went through, and I'm sure he had some people helping him. It probably wasn't just Mike. But he puts together this book with information specific to your chassis. It's an amazing thing. It was a 2-day class, cost me $179. It was definitely worth the money. In addition to the engine service and the transmission service, I'm having new shocks put on. I priced, now this is probably going to be controversial, but I'll take it for what it is. I'm not a shock snob, okay? I looked at Coney, I looked at Bilstein, and I looked at Monroe Magnum. The difference in price was staggering. To get the shocks changed front and rear with the shocks and everything, it's going to cost me about $400. It was going to be almost $1,000 to put the Coneys on. And to be honest with you, this is not a race car. It does have a little bit of body roll, and maybe the Coneys might help a little bit with that. But where I only drive this thing 10,000 miles a year, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going with the inexpensive Monroe shocks, and I'll let you know how they are as soon as I get back on the road. I'm also having the hydraulic system looked at. The hydraulic system on this coach runs the radiator fan. I have a side radiator set up, and so it has a hydraulically driven fan. It runs the power steering. There's a couple other systems that are hydraulically driven. And if you watch my channel, you may remember that I had a breakdown last October in Camp Verde, Arizona, where I blew one of those hydraulic hoses because it was rubbing on the frame. Well, that resulted in a tow for me because with no hydraulic pressure, I had no cooling and I had no power steering. And driving this 35,000 pound beast without power steering is pretty impossible. So that ended up in a tow. Well, when I was doing my pre-flight check yesterday, I popped the hood to check the oil and just, generally look at things, look at the serpentine belt and all that kind of stuff. And I noticed I had a little bit of an oil leak. And I also noticed that this big, huge hose that I'm showing you here looks pretty cracked and pretty tired. And so I'm going to have them go ahead and look at that as well. Now, straightforward, I have changed the oil in this. I've done the transmission service in this. It's not rocket science. The issue is, where do you get rid of 20 quarts of motor oil or 5 gallons of transmission fluid? Okay, especially as a full-timer, I live on the road full-time. I'm not packing around an oil pan big enough to capture that much oil. And yeah, a lot of the auto parts store, O'Reilly's, what's the other one, AutoZone, they take waste oil. They'll recycle waste oil for you. But you still got the hassle of packing around 5 or 10 gallons of waste oil, getting it to the store, having containers to put it in. To me, it was just not practical. Here at Warner Truck Center, it's only going to be about $250 to get the engine service. That's the oil filter and a fuel filter. That's actually a little bit cheaper than Speedco. Speedco is another one you'll see along the interstate. They specialize in quick change. They're like the Jiffy Lube, but for trucks and or RVs, and they service RVs. And I've had my oil changed at Speedco before, and they do a fine job. And when everything's said and done, by the time you get out of there, it's like $325 or maybe a little bit more just for your basic oil, fuel. Well, actually, the last time I had it done, they didn't have the fuel filter, and I carry a spare fuel filter with me, so I supplied the fuel filter, but it was still about $325 for the oil filter, chassis lube, that kind of stuff. So it is absolutely practical to be able to do your own. If you've got the facilities, if you still have a sticks and bricks place, where you can store oil until you can get it to the recycler or whatever, then it probably will be just fine to do your own oil and filters and stuff like that. When it comes down to shocks, that's probably something else I could have done myself, but I just don't have the tools. You really are looking at having to have some kind of impact wrench, and yeah, they make electric impact wrenches and all that. But again, that's just stuff, you have it, you use it, how often? Okay? And when you live full-time in your RV, space is at a premium, so you got to keep in mind, packing around another tool is another, bit of space. It's also another 20 pounds that you're packing around, that you're paying the fuel to haul around, and so on and so forth. And I suspect that if you sat down and did the math on it, you're going to find out pretty quick that instead of hauling around one tool to do a specialty job, it's probably just as easy to go and pay somebody else to do it. The fact of the matter is, I get a lot of comfort and good feeling coming to a professional service shop like this because they are Freightliner certified. They have certified technicians. They do this all the time. They make very few mistakes, and their labor is warranted. So if there's a problem, they're going to stand behind their work. And so I think that's another plus to having a professional service shop do your service like this. As a side note, before I forget, it always pays to shop around, okay? Because the shop rates are going to be different anywhere you go. And some shops don't like to work on RVs because, it's a little bit more difficult than being able to just tip the hood forward on a truck and have complete and full access to the motor. So it's going to cost a little bit more probably to have RVs worked on just because of the limited amount of space that you can get into the engine and work on. The last thing is like on this hydraulic system that I'm going to have looked at, I think it's best to just have the pros do that. This is such a critical system. It runs some really critical parts of your RV, but I think it makes better sense to have somebody that works on this equipment do it. I'm pretty sure I'm probably going to have a hose replaced, and they probably can make the hose here, and if not, I'm in a big enough area that there's going to be a shop in town that's going to be able to hopefully make this hose. If not, that's fine, I'll wait a day. I'm not in any hurry to get anywhere. So let's talk a little bit about scheduling. Oh, and just as a side note, you might note I'm wearing my Freightliner hat today. I only wear it when I get my Freightliner service done. There's an email interruption, that's fine. But and there's the second one. The thing about coming to these truck shops is a couple things that are good, and there's some things that aren't so good. In this particular case, I tried to schedule this appointment. They typically don't schedule these appointments. Well, they will, but they won't. They can expect you to be here on Monday, like it is today. I checked in first thing this morning. I was actually here last night, as I mentioned earlier. But you're still going to be waiting in line. That's just the nature of the beast. These shops are first come, first served. They don't schedule. It's the nature of the business. They are here to service the trucks that are rolling down the road. So don't expect to say get a 7 a.m. appointment and get in the shop at 7 a.m. Right now it is 10:31. I'll be happy if they get me in mid-afternoon. I've got nothing else to do. I'm sitting here. I'm kind of faunching at the bit to get up and do some fishing. But I'm just going to sit here and chill, make a video. I'll probably go work and edit on this video a little bit. I got all the comforts of home with me right here. And so I'm in no hurry. I like to get the work done, get it done effectively and efficiently, and make sure it's done right. And so I think to answer that question, when is it time to get the pros to do the work? The first answer is when you're not comfortable doing it yourself. You may not be a DIYer. You might not have the tools to do the work correctly. Large sockets and various things like that. Impact wrenches that it takes to get these high torque bolts off. Second, if it's a major system, have a pro do it. Don't be monkeying around with wheel bearings and those sorts of things. I just don't recommend it. You're going to get out somewhere, you're going to be boondocking, you're going to be 150 miles from nowhere. Your fix is going to fail, and then you're going to be looking at a very expensive tow. I'm going to take a pause here because I've kind of got through the end of this. I want to, I'll pick this up when I finish, when I check out from getting the service done. So I promised you an update on how the service turned out, and I'm at this point having to give the shop a D. I'd mentioned to the service advisor that I didn't want to be disabled in the bay overnight. I want to be able to stay in the coach. The level of work they were doing on it should have been such that it wouldn't have been, that shouldn't have been a problem. And ultimately it wasn't, because I stopped, at the point where it was going to disable me at the bay. But on this hydraulic hose issue, I noticed I had a leak. I mentioned that earlier in the video. And I told him I wanted this hose fixed. And so I gave him back the coach at 7 a.m. the next morning and told the mechanic, and I told the service advisor and anybody else that would listen that hose needed to be fixed. And I told them Tuesday morning with the idea that they'd pull that hose off so they could get it out to a place and have that hose made, because we knew it wasn't in stock. And they couldn't find it anywhere, as a matter of fact. So the long and short of it was they were going to have to try to find somebody that could make the hose, and it was going to be either in Twin Falls or Burley. Burley is another 40 miles east of Twin Falls, roughly. Anyway, I go to pick up the bill, and I'll review that with you here in a minute. And I'm reading the bill line, where they were working on the hydraulic system, and I didn't see any hose or anything else. And so I'm going like, what the hell? I walked outside, looked, they hadn't changed that hose. Well, I went from packing my patience, which you have to do when you're working with these large companies like this, to no patience. And I kind of let them have it. Then I told them I wanted to talk to the shop manager. Shop manager, it's like 15 minutes, they're out there scurrying around trying to figure out what the fuck happened. And anyway, long short story is he comes and gets me. We said, well, we're going to make it good for you. We're going to make it right with you. We can do this, we can do this. And they went out and took pictures and measurements and all this crap. And I saw them doing this because I was out doing my pre-flight. When I call my pre-flights, I'm checking the oils and the serpentine belt, making sure everything's kind of ready for the road. And talking to this guy, and we'll make it right with you. So I'm going to hold a judgment for a while on whether or not they make it right with me. But the fact of the matter is to get that hose tightened, they charged me $72. I could have done that myself. I figured I'm having it in for service. I'm going to take care of it. Just let them take care of it. Ridiculous. The other thing was, as I'm reviewing the bill on the shocks, it was $656 for shocks. And I can stomach that. That was about where I thought it should be. But what gets my ass is that they charged me $70.32 for freight. Now that's the overnight freight, because when they ordered the shocks in, they got the wrong shocks for the front. It says it right here in the write-up. You know, they give you a little write-up about what they did. So they charged me extra freight when I specifically worked with them way in advance, so they'd have the opportunity to get the shocks in, pay normal freight or get it in with their normal freight, not have to pay high overnight freight charges. Number two. And on the shocks, I mentioned earlier, I'm not a shock snob. And the first 50, 60 miles with the Monroes, it seemed to be pretty good. I did notice a big difference over what I figured were probably the original shocks. And so I did notice a pretty nice difference on that. But there was one little section of road just a little ways from here where I'm recording this video. And there was quite a bit of wheel hop, and it might have just been the road, but we'll see. Anyway, I'd like it. It seems like it's going to ride okay. Well, the proof is in the pudding, I guess. The oil change service, that's the, lube the chassis, new oil filter, new fuel filter. By the way, it looks like they overcharged me for oil. They got 30 quarts here. There's no way this thing takes 30 quarts. I think it takes 20 maximum, but I think 19 is what it's supposed to take. So they overcharged me there. The filter seems about normal, but it was $256.67. You could stop at Speedco, which I've done before. They run about $325. Transmission service came out just perfect. No complaints so far. $286.77 to get the transmission service. That's with synthetic oil, which they used 5 gallons. The synthetic oil alone was $183.10. That's the most expensive part. That was $45 for the labor and $58 for the filters. I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but I'll put this piece in here just in case. I did have the speedometer re-rated. I had put larger tires on many years ago due to some availability issues with the tire when I needed one, and I was way out in the middle of nowhere. And so I just went ahead and put truck tires on it at the time. It was after a blowout, so it was, I needed to get something taken care of right then and there. When I put the truck tires on, the 295s are a little bit larger than the 275s, 6.6% to be exact. And so they needed to change the parameters in the computer for the speedometer. And it looks like they did a good job on that. I measured it coming up here, and it seemed to be just fine. Okay, so I can't say it enough. You need to pack your patience. If you're going to one of these shops like this, it's going to take some time. Have a plan, be prepared. The unfortunate situation at the end was very disappointing. The overcharging for the oil was a little disappointing. I'm going to question that. And I'll let you know how it turns out. But for now, I think I'm going to wrap this video up. As always, if you like what you see, I appreciate those thumbs up. Those are really helpful. Lets me know you like the content and that I should continue to make more of this type of content. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe and do all those social things. And as a reminder, apparently there's some changes coming for our YouTube around notifications. So hit that notification bell, if you will. That'll let you know that I have a new video out and I won't get lost in the shuffle. But for now, it's time to go. Thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. Until we get together the next time,